we welcome in Nigam Arora, founder of the Arora Report. Thank you so much for being with us. We have a lot to talk about in the tech sector, and we can really get into the weeds here in this conversation, which I look forward to. But first, where are we in the tech world, and is tech still an exciting investment for 2025?
Definitely, Nicole. I made this call in 2022 about AI before most were talking about it, that this is going to go on until 2030, and it's not going to be in a straight line. It's going to be treacherous at times, but overall, tech is going to be exciting, especially related to AI, nuclear power, quantum, all the way to 2030. A lot of money to be made.
And a name like Nvidia, which sort of has off the highs and people start to get nervous when they see that. Should they be nervous, or is Nvidia still in a great spot?
Nvidia is still in a great spot, but do not expect the kind of performance that we have seen before. We bought Nvidia when it was $12.55, just before it took off. So we have large gains. And the concept I'll share with you, I think, which is what investors should do. So we have a core position, which we hold on for a very long time, several years. And then we have trade around positions. These are trading positions, shorter term. So when Nvidia dipped this time, we took on a trade around position. So when investors follow that kind of methodology, you're gaining from long-term trends, but then you're adding to your returns with trade around positions and lowering your risk and taking advantage of dislocations. And as I said, it's going to be treacherous at times. We'll have plenty of opportunities to buy things. Now, one more thing about Nvidia. So I kind of say that the stocks go in 5 stages. And the first stage is when nobody talks about it, nobody wants it. And that's when we bought Nvidia. That's the stage 1. 5th stage is when it's a crowded trade where everybody wants it, everybody knows about it. So Nvidia is in the 5th stage. More gains are to come, but nothing like what we have seen before.
Yeah, understood. Okay, so growth, but slower growth. In the meantime, Jensen Huang talked about quantum computing and said how far off it was. You had others, D-Wave and all that, sort of, countering that and saying that's not necessarily the case. Where do you stand on that?
Well, Jensen has his own book, right? His business can get hurt by quantum computing. He has a reason to downplay it. And the others that you talked about, they have their own book, right? They're small companies, they're trying to raise money, and they have to say quantum computing is right here, right? So, and nobody's lying. It's just nuanced things. So, if you look at Jensen's statement, he's very smart. He used the words very useful, and I want to emphasize that, very useful. And I agree with Jensen that very useful meaning, if we say quantum computing would do most of what we do with computing today, that is 15, 20, 30 years away. So that's very useful. But that doesn't mean there won't be many applications. And one of the applications I've been focused on is breaking encryption, right? Bitcoin runs because this is encrypted, right? And so do cryptos and, a lot of our banking and so on. I think quantum computing is going to start breaking encryptions within the next 5 years. Then we're going to need quantum-proof encryptions. So there are going to be a lot of opportunities there. And again, we need to look at hard numbers. And one of the hard numbers that came out in IBM's call here recently, after their earnings, is from 2017 till now, IBM has generated $1 billion worth of revenue from quantum computing. And that's not the hope, like we have a lot of smaller quantum computing companies. That's real. Now, most of their revenue is coming from other companies trying to do research and development, getting ready for quantum computing. So it's commercially not viable. But next 5 years, we'll start seeing things.
Yeah. And we're showing, for example, QUBT, quantum computing. We have D-Wave Quantum. We actually had the folks from that company on with us, Rigetti, IonQ. Those are some of the quantum names. And I thought it was interesting that you mentioned encryption, because I have heard that before, that quantum computing now could break the codes of Bitcoin and stuff like that. And so that makes people who are now finally feeling trusting of crypto nervous once again, because they waited for the ETFs, they waited to get involved, and then they don't want to hear that this has been, the encryption is broken and Bitcoin goes from 100,000 to zero.
You're right. Bitcoin is not going to go to zero, but we may have a problem now. Technically, we can make Bitcoin quantum proof, but it's open source. It's not an easy process, right? So I'm hopeful that before somebody can break Bitcoin encryption, Bitcoin would be made quantum proof, but this is not going to be an easy process. But a lot of other cryptos, the smaller ones, I think some of them can be taken to cleaners by those who are going to break their encryption. So my advice would be, do not invest in smaller cryptos. If you're doing that, do that as a trade. Don't do that as a long term. Bitcoin, again, the same concept. Have a core position, which you can handle even if it goes down, very small, and then trade around as things come along.
Yeah. So let's go over some things for investors. I mean, we talked about some of the quantum computing names. You think those are probably going to rise, right? In addition to that, we have so many other opportunities. I mean, when it comes to, we mentioned Nvidia, but how about like nuclear power, for example? Where does that fit in, and would you be investing in some of those names?
Absolutely. I spent a lot of my life in nuclear power. 60% of the nuclear power plants in this country have my hand in them. I think nuclear power is a great future. These smart modular reactors, I think, are going to do extremely well. AI is power hungry, and nuclear is a clean source. Now, the problem with nuclear stocks is they've run up too much. They're just like a lot of quantum stocks, they're divorced from reality. So right now you can trade them. For investment purposes, you need to see corrections, pullbacks, and I'm going to make a very bold prediction. I know a lot of my friends are not going to like it. The quantum stocks, the nuclear stocks, I wouldn't be surprised if over the next 2 years we see a 50% plus pullback. And that's when I would buy for investments. But before that, we kind of trade around. Now, one opportunity in nuclear that may be coming, and that's a uranium stock, Chemical. They own a very large uranium mine in Canada. Uranium is a fuel that runs nuclear.
Yeah.
And when Trump imposed briefly tariffs on Canada, it was not fully clear where uranium belongs. He was doing 25% on Canada, but 10% in Canadian oil. And I read that executive order that talks about energy. So assuming
Right.
uranium is classified as energy and there's a 10% tariff and chemical stock goes down, I'll buy it.
Okay. So you'll watch for those to pull back a bit. Last but not least, when it came to DeepSeek, it was a big fallout. There was a lot of nerves and tensions that day. Granted, you had some buying, people who stepped in and bought the dips, but it started to bring up the question of, is China getting ahead of us in some form? What say you? What was your takeaway of what we learned from DeepSeek?
Well, first of all, I was not surprised. DeepSeek, the prior version came along during Christmas time, and I had looked at it. Newer version was out for a week before I looked at it. And, I've been in technology for a long time. These kind of things come along, and they seldom slow things down. And this time, that's exactly what happened. So the dip was a buying opportunity. Now, question regarding China. I think China is a real competitor. But I don't think they're going to beat the United States in the long run, because I think it's the culture that we have in the United States, the freedom, the ability to attract the best and the brightest from all over the world, the availability of the capital. I think all those things are going to play. But China is going to be right at our heels. It's not going to be easy for us.
Right. All right. Nigam Arora of the Arora Report. What a great conversation, and so many details when it came to quantum and nuclear and more. Thank you for being on with us. Glad to have this conversation today. Thank you.